Hi guys, I'm Mitchell Carling and welcome back to another video of the Bossing It podcast. Today I've got a very special guest, Kim Kiyosaki.
Nice to see you, Mitchell.
Thank you for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Now, before we get started, I did just want to say it's nice to meet you. However, I have met you before one time when I was a little baby for the Ryder Cup, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, that's right, the Ryder Cup. Yes, absolutely.
In Scotland.
Yes, we did.
So, it's not the first time.
That was fun. That was a great memory.
Yeah.
That was a great memory. Yep.
I heard it was an amazing trip. You guys got to see St Andrews and go all over Scotland.
We were hoping to play golf, but that didn't happen.
Yeah, it's hard to get on that.
So we put our name in the lottery.
Still waiting now. But yeah, so let's jump right into it. So you achieved financial freedom in 1994, if I'm not mistaken, before Rich Dad became a global brand that it is now today.
Correct.
Once you no longer needed the money, why did you then end up going on to create something so big as Rich Dad?
Oh, that's a great question, Mitchell. So first of all, when we were financially free, a lot of people think, well, you must have had millions in the bank or lots of stocks, or you sold your business for a lot of money, and we didn't have any of that. So all we had was we were investing in real estate, primarily real estate. So we had $10,000 a month coming in every month from our real estate investments, but our living expenses were only $3,000 a month. So at that point, we were financially free. And that's the formula we've been teaching all along, is have passive income greater than your monthly living expenses. So when that happened, people then started asking us, how did you do it? How did you do it? And Robert and I have always been very mission-based. And he talked today about, when we started the company, it's like, what does God want done? What needs to be done? What is wanted and needed in the world that nobody's done? That's kind of the mantra or the philosophy that we've lived by. What is needed and wanted in the world that nobody's doing that we could do? Yeah. And so when we became financially free, everybody kept asking us how we did it, and we thought that must be what's needed and wanted, because the purpose of an entrepreneur is to solve problems. Yeah. And the problem we saw was that there was no financial education in schools anywhere in the world. So being mission-based as we are, we thought this is a task big enough to take on. Yeah, okay. And so we started, most people think we started with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but we started with the Cashflow board game. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so the Cashflow board game is amazing. I mean, we just You've been playing it.
I've been playing it since I was around 3 or 4.
Nice.
Really.
Nice.
But again, so what does that say actually about, well, what do you think that says about being financially free in the first place, where people are trying to get to that, whereas you then did have the time to go and help all these other people, where a lot of people wouldn't do? For example, I think a lot of people would keep it to themselves, right, and continue to grow themselves instead of helping other people. So I just kind of think, is that just deep down you guys thought that was your prayer, the calling from God, essentially?
It was like it was a mission. Yeah, there was a problem that needed solving that nobody was solving. We're as entrepreneurs, we're always looking to solve problems. Yeah. And that was the biggest one facing us. Right now, the Rich Dad company is running really smoothly. We're looking at new markets. We've actually made some changes in the company, went back to focusing on just the game and the books. Okay. And we're looking at, and we're now expanding into other markets. We're coming to the Spanish market. We're coming to the kids. We're launching kids books that are going to reach the kids at younger ages. So it's all about the mission. So right now I'm like, okay, so that's kind of running smoothly, but it doesn't take a lot of my time. So what's the next problem that needs to be solved?
Just touching on the kids' books, what's the goal for that? Are they like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, shortened down?
No, they're very different. And I didn't know a lot about the book business. I give a lot of credit to Mona Gambetta. She does all our publishing for us. And there's different age groups and what appeals to these different age groups. So one is like a picture book, but it's bringing the principles. It's like Cashflow for kids. It doesn't have the math. It doesn't have all the calculations, but it gets the message and the philosophy across, and the concepts across. So we're doing that in a very simple way for like very young kids. Then there's the middle, and then there's like young adults.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that because over the years you've seen so many more younger people come into these
Yes.
things as well,
Yes.
even with their family and
Yes.
things like that?
Well, just like you.
Yeah, just
you
like
came
yeah.
when you were young, and yes, we see more and more. Like I look around this event today, and there's a lot of kids here with their parents or with one parent. I've spoken with like 4 in like the last half hour.
Yeah.
These are kids that want to learn. So I think parents are also understanding that it's really important that kids be able to be financially responsible for themselves, and seeing what's happening in the world. The governments and all, they're doing anything but wanting people to be responsible for their own lives.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the keys, and maybe that's the next direction is how do you teach people to be responsible, not just financially, but in all ways. But financial is huge, because if you are not financially taking care of yourself, then you're going to become dependent on a job or a government, and then you basically lose control of your own life and what you really want in life. I mean, the subtitle of my book, Mitchell, is because I hate being told what to do.
Yes.
I was fired from jobs. I was a bit over. I'm still, not a good rule follower. I don't make a good employee. So I had to figure out what path was going to work for me.
Yeah.
And I think people all need to find that path.
That one path.
Yeah.
Okay. So taking it back a little bit now, your first investment was a $45,000 rental deal.
Yes.
Which I'm sure you were producing about $25.
$25 a month,
like
exactly.
Yeah. And you said your hand was trembling at the closing table.
Yeah.
What did that first $25 teach you the years of study you could never have done?
That's a great question. Nothing better than hands-on learning. Nothing better, hands-on learning. So yes, I was scared to death and I talked to a lot of first-time investors. They're scared to death. It's like, what if I make a mistake? What if I lose my money? What if everybody was right and I don't know what I'm doing? And so all these fears and doubts are going through. Well, I don't need to listen to other people's fears and doubts because I had my own. But once I finally, it's like there was a line in the sand, and I'm like, if I don't step over that line, I'm never going to learn. So I'm going to just go for it. And it was $25 a month. But the lessons I learned, the fundamentals of investing, I learned so much on that little 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. I made so many mistakes. Tried to raise the rent when the tenant moved out, and I raised it too much, so it sat empty for 3 months.
Yeah.
And that cost me a lot of money. Put money into things that really weren't important and ignored things that were important. One of the keys is being highly responsive to your tenants. I learned sometimes I was, too generous where it didn't need to be, and sometimes, I learned so many lessons, and especially, the calculations and the financials of one rental property is the same as a 300-unit apartment building.
Yeah.
Just more moving parts.
So do you think that was your scariest deal then, the first
It was.
one?
It was by far.
Okay.
Yeah. I still was nervous the next deal and the next deal and the next deal. And now I'm you never know what's going to happen. This world is kind of crazy, and they could change the rules. So I could buy something, and all of a sudden the rules change. I was just talking to a woman who lives in New York State, and she's like, I want to start investing. I'm like, okay, don't invest in New York State. And she's like, why? I'm like, it's so pro-tenant and anti-landlord. They are again raising taxes again. It's very hard. You've got to look at places where they welcome your money, where they welcome you as an investor. And so a lot of people are. You got to go where your money is going to get the biggest bang for the buck.
Yeah.
And yes, you want to be close to home, ideally, because you want to be near your property. But sometimes you also got to look at the numbers and make sure it makes sense.
Yeah.
The numbers just tell a story, and there are interesting stories out there.
Yeah. So, and then what are the best places in the States, let's keep in the States right now then, for investing in property? I know you said New York State, for example.
Not New York State. I've never invested in California. Same thing. Taxes, very left in terms of, in California and New York, somebody could stop paying rent for 3-4 months and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So you want to go to states like Arizona, like Texas, like Tennessee, Florida, South Carolina, where their rules are in your favor.
Right.
Like Florida right now, and this is not for investment, but Florida is or they've just introduced legislation to eliminate property taxes on residential property, not investment property. But again, they're like being very progressive in a good way
Yeah.
to make it to welcome people to their state versus penalizing them.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
which seems to be going on a lot.
I know. Well,
It's
so
bad in
you know,
Scotland,
the way that governments work and the tax system works, they reward those who do not produce, and they punish those who do produce. Yeah.
So going back to that rental increase on $35,
Yes.
what happened then with that? Like, what assumption did you fail to test in order for that to happen?
Yeah.
And you to lose 1,500, let's say it was, wasn't it?
One thing I did not do was I didn't get comparable rental rates from other rental properties in the area.
Okay.
I was greedy. I thought, well, if the tenant's gonna pay, $500, certainly I've improved it enough to go to $700. Well, no, because the market doesn't
Work like that. Yeah.
No, the market didn't want that. Wasn't for that neighborhood. That rent was way too high. So then I correct.
Yeah.
And I dropped the rent and I got the place rented, and yeah.
So do you see that problem still happening with new people coming in now, or is there more of an equivalent up to date kind of?
I think every time you're starting out in real estate, you're gonna make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
I think it's just natural. But you're hands-on and you're in the game. That's the most important thing. No matter what investment it is, I always say when you're starting out, put a little money down. Put a little money you got to get into the game. Even if it's just buying a 1 ounce silver coin, you're in the game. You've parted with, those dollars or whatever your currency is, and then you get interested. Then you start looking at what's the price of silver today? What's the price of gold today? Is it up? It's down. Why is it up and why is it down? What's causing it? And you get really smart. You can put $10 down. It's whatever it is.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be big sums of
No,
money.
I think silver's at like $60 an ounce today, and I still think gold and silver is a great investment given the uncertainty.
To start off with as well, do you think?
Yeah, I think instead of dollars or whatever your currency is, people should have gold and silver as a hedge against inflation, as a hedge against uncertainty in the economic world. The dollar is up and down, and then there's world events that happen. So gold has always held its value. Yeah. And people say, well, what if gold goes away? What if they confiscate it? Possible, but not probable. Yeah.
Okay. So before Rich Dad, you sold everything and you moved to California. And within 2 months, you said you were virtually broke. That business eventually expanded to 11 offices across 7 countries. What was the unglamorous decision that turned survival into scale in that? So what was the decisions you made that went from, okay, we're broke here, to expanding into that?
No, that's a great question. Because we sold everything, we took the money we had, and as you said, lasted a few months. But what happened in that time is because we were struggling so much. There was a time we were sleeping in this little brown Toyota Celica. We were sleeping in people's basements. What it does to your self-esteem is terrible. And my self-esteem just dropped tremendously. And I'd go to sleep some nights going, maybe I just won't wake up. It was a really hard time. The decision was, and it's funny, when a decision is made, sometimes it's just like in a second. And I woke up one morning and I went, I just have to go do something. I just have to get moving. Nothing happens until something moves. I got to go move and do something. And so I reached out to my girlfriend, and she had a clothing store. And I said, let me set up little mini stores at these little salons. And I started doing that. So the first step was you have to get into action. And then Robert did the same thing at the same time. He started working with this gentleman who was teaching entrepreneurship. And then the more we were in motion, the more people we meet, the more things would happen. And then eventually the gentleman that he was working with stepped aside and we took over that business. Yeah.
Okay. Why?
But I'm just going to reiterate that nothing happens. There's no magic. There's no there's no serendipitous events that happen. There's nothing that happens unless you're in motion, unless you're out there doing something. And so people who are waiting for something to come to them, no, you got to be moving. You got to be moving to have that magic happen.
But we're pushing towards something.
Yeah. There's got to be like a goal, and you're going towards the goal. And as you're moving towards the goal, all these other things are happening that you didn't expect to happen because you're moving.
Yeah.
The goal typically is just like this little, light at the end of the tunnel, but the goal really doesn't matter as much as the movement and all the things that happen as you're moving towards that goal.
Towards it, yeah. Why California? Just off of the.
Oh, why did we go to California? Yeah. Because that's where the gentleman was that Robert wanted to study under.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And how long were you out there for?
We were there for 2.5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we moved up to Oregon.
Oh, Oregon. Yeah. Before moving back.
And at that time, also Mitchell, we were not investing at that time, and California wasn't as crazy as it is now.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful place. It is a beautiful place, and so that the taxes and all of that didn't impact us at that time. As soon as we started our company, though, we moved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I love California.
Yeah, it's a great state. Just visit it. Don't live there.
Yeah, don't live there. Yeah. So most people know Robert as the voice of Rich Dad, but you helped turn those ideas into a company. What did you understand about product, people, and distribution that made the philosophy commercially be?
I was learning every day as we were going. Yeah, as I said, when we created the board game, we had no idea how to create a board game. We just started, and then you test it, and so we had that product, and then Robert started working on a brochure for the Cashflow board game, which turned into Rich Dad Poor Dad. And when you write a book, especially like a first-time book, you have no idea if it's going to be a success or not. Nobody's more surprised than Robert and myself at the success that this book has had. We're in 51 languages and I don't know how many countries. We're pretty much in almost every country in the world. It hit such a chord, and we're talking today about there's a spiritual thread that goes through that book. So this is funny. I have a degree in business. That's my degree.
Yeah.
I didn't learn anything in college about business that was applicable to the real world. So I was learning, and I love business. I think probably that was a key, that I was very passionate. I loved the game of business, and I love learning. So it was really a learning ground for me and Robert. We were just kind of making it up as we go.
Yeah.
We had no 5-year business plan. No.
It's cool that you said you learned business, your business degree and things. I didn't do business, but I done economics in school.
Yes.
And it was the same thing, whereas I'd go home trying to learn my exams and things, doing my homework. I'd ask my dad the question. He'd be like, "You tell me get it wrong in school," and he'd be like, "No, that's right to what we're doing."
Right,
it's completely different.
It's opposite. It's almost opposite. Yeah.
Of what you're trying to learn for business. You're getting taught that in school.
Yeah. Well, they teach you in school to do it by yourself. Don't make mistakes, and there's only one right answer. And of course, in the real world, there's many right answers. You need a team to be successful, and the only way we're going to learn is by making mistakes.
So you launched the Cashflow game. What early consumer behavior convinced you that people would learn money better by playing the game than being lectured in a classroom?
We didn't know. We loved games. And even in our seminars, we would play games, not like board games, but put people in simulations. So we knew games was a very powerful way to learn. With the Cashflow game, it's complicated. It's not a simple game, but we wanted to create a game that was entertaining, where people had fun, but at the same time we're learning. So we kind of tricked them.
Yeah.
Play the game, have a good time, but you're also going to learn in the process.
Yeah.
So when you say the word behavior, one of the most interesting things about the Cashflow game is watching people's behavior come out around money, because the purpose of the game is to have people think differently about money.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the very first beta tests we did on the game. We had it on like flip chart paper, and the game, and we used bullets for moving the pieces, because that's what we had at the house. And there was this one couple, and all of a sudden she's like yelling, and I'm like, wow. And I'm like, she's yelling loud. And I'm like, and all she could say is, "You never let me win. You never let me win." And I'm like, this has nothing to do with the cash flow game. But money brings out, and the playing with money brings out your behavior of also how you interact with money. I have, you see people and they're hoarding cash. They're not investing the money. They're hoarding cash, or they'll get the $1 stock card, which is like one of the best cards in the game, where you want to buy as much as you can.
Much you can, yeah.
People put $10. I'll do $10. So you're seeing their behavior. You're seeing their fear. You're seeing people that are really aggressive, and they're going to go for broke and go into debt and do all this bad debt to do all this, these deals. So it's a great game to, if you're going to have a business partner or a spouse, play that game.
Play it with them. And there's never, I don't think there's ever been one of the same type of games. Every game is different.
It's always different
as
yeah,
well.
It's always different.
And you can even play it online as well.
Yeah, you can now.
So
yes.
Yeah. How long did that take to make it then? How many times was that?
Gosh, we sat at that dining room table. We had a small house in Phoenix every night, and we'd say, "What about this? What about this? What about this?" And then we'd go have a pitcher of beer and calm our minds, because my brain hurt after a while. You're trying to figure out something. You're trying to make something that you've never made before. Mm-hmm. But it took probably was like 9 months.
9 months?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you haven't updated it since, or it's just...
We have a little bit, but not much. We really haven't changed much of none of the fundamentals have changed. We've updated some of the characters and the look. We've added things like crypto. We've added network marketing. Some of the, because we just want to keep it, up to date.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so
but same with Rich Dad Poor Dad. Rich Dad Poor Dad has not changed at all. That book is the same.
It's the same.
It's the same book. And I think Rich Dad Poor Dad is more applicable today than ever before.
Yeah. And every time you read it, I've read it countless times now, but every time you read it, you learn something
new. Yeah.
And then you build up on it.
Yes.
It truly is an amazing book.
Well, think about it. The first time you read it, the first time, like, I read a book, and then I go out and I do stuff and I apply it. And then I come back and I read it, and I'm like, oh, God, I don't even remember reading this part or this part, because you're in a different place.
Yeah.
Same with the game. Once you play the game, and then you go out and do stuff, and then you come back to the game and you're at another level.
Yes, so, and that matters to you now.
Yes.
And different, yeah. So over the years...
Let me say one other thing.
Okay.
I'm going to just rail on school system for a moment. So in school, they lecture you, and you read and you write, right? It's all theory. There's very, very few places they do hands-on. And that's how you learn, is hands-on. So people come out of school thinking they're smart, but they're not. Or they come out of school thinking they're dumb, and they're not. So the school system, I think, has done such an incredible disservice to kids throughout the years, because only 20% of kids learn the way the school system is designed. 80% of us don't learn that way. So 80% of us come out thinking we're stupid.
You've done something wrong.
Yeah. So it's a broken system that really needs to be overhauled. It kind of needs to be blown up and recreated. I don't even think you can overhaul it at this point.
Rich Dad will be the school.
There you go.
Of America soon. So over the years, you've worked with Robert for how many countless years now? Mm-hmm. You must have had a few big disagreements or mindset changes.
Yes.
Over the years. How do you deal with that then, working so closely together?
That's the $1 million question.
How do you deal with that?
There's all sorts of ways, and you've got to. It's also an ego. It helps diminish the ego, because you have to know you're not right all the time. Mm-hmm. And typically, our only arguments we would have in our marriage were over the business and the way it should be done. And so it's not easy. I mean, couples ask me, should we go into business together? I'm like, well, Robert was my greatest asset, my greatest liability, and he would say the same to me about me. Mm-hmm. But what I think was most important is that we were really, really both tuned to the mission. That was the most important thing, was the mission. So even if we argue, it's not like I'm quitting the business, because we had this mission to elevate the financial well-being of humanity. So when hiccups came and obstacles came, we made sure we had to deal with it one way or another to keep going and not quit.
So did you find yourself then, even if you did have an argument, you kind of come to when the calm heads are there, like, okay, this is the best thing for the business.
But that's what
This
we
is
did
our
our
baby.
best to do.
Your
Yeah,
best,
we did our best. The decisions we made for the business really had nothing to do with money, and people have a hard time understanding that. Our decisions were what was best, what was going to get financial education to the most people possible in the world. And so the money in our own pockets was not an issue. And we had, we were okay. Financially, we were financially free, so we were okay. But most every decision was about what's best for the business, not what's going to line our pockets with money. And I think the mission is what overruled any argument that we had.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So the greater goal of the business, the greater good of the business,
Yes.
kind of saved.
Yeah. So a lot of people, when they start a business, they need to have a really big goal. And when we started out and we said I remember sitting down writing, working out what's the mission of this company. And finally we came to elevating the financial well-being of humanity. And we looked at each other going, really? That's a little scary. And we would tell people the mission and they're like, who the hell do you think you are?
Yeah.
That's a little bravado, don't you think? And we're like, well, if it's big enough, when the obstacles come and the setbacks come and the hardships come, we've had lawsuits, we've had bad partners. When all that comes, if we can just keep the mission foremost in our minds and in our hearts, then we will get by. We'll survive it. Yep.
So just on that last note, you're saying the goal was quite spectacular from where you're starting.
Yeah.
How important do you think that is for people having that goal that is just like what you're saying? People are like, wow, you'll never get to that essentially.
Yeah. Hopefully you never do.
Yeah.
I mean, if the goal's big enough, you probably never accomplish it.
Yeah. But
I think it's crucial.
You think setting bigger goals, more unachievable as per se, is better than...
Yeah. Well, that's a good point because goal, what is the definition of a goal? So it's a goal, but it's more the mission. Mm-hmm. What's the mission? What is that big problem as an entrepreneur you're wanting to solve? If it's just to make, so much money per month, when it gets tough, you're going to quit.
Yeah.
If the goal is to, provide for my family, again, there's a lot of ways you can provide for a family. You can get a job, you can do all sorts of things. But when it's something that's near and dear to your heart and soul, and it's something you really believe in, and you really want to make a change, and you really want to, we were brought up. I never met the gentleman Buckminster Fuller, but he was a futurist, visionary. He was an architect. He created the geodesic dome, invented the geodesic dome. He basically committed his life to the betterment of the world, and that was our mentor or role model. So we always looked at it, and it's not an easy thing because there's not a lot of, how are you going to make a difference in the world? But that was a question we asked. So if somebody is starting a business, there's got to be a really strong reason why they're starting this business. And it's got to be bigger than them, and it's got to be bigger than their family. It's got to be something that's going to keep them going when times get really, really tough so that they don't quit. I see so many entrepreneurs quit when it gets tough because their mission or their goal is just not big enough to keep them going.
I think that's a beautiful part to finish off the questions. That was very, very amazing. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Rachel. Thank you.
Again,
this is
great
enjoyable.
Great to finally meet you when I can remember it.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks again. I know it's very busy.
Well, thanks for what you're doing because you're doing a great service educating people all over the world.
Yeah,
so it's really, really
and I'm
important.
sure a lot of people listening will benefit from this. I mean, the perfect audience for anyone that wants to get ahead. It's great.
Well,
conversation.
you keep going, keep it up, and keep teaching people.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mitchell.